Welcome to my 2025 year in review. Now, I've nearly been out of corporate for 2 years now. And in December, I always get this twitchy urge with my corporate former self to create some sort of strategic deck about reflecting on the numbers and different initiatives I've worked on through the year. So I decided just to lean into it. But instead of creating slides around BS projections, or trying to turn some turd project into this incredible unicorn, I'm going to give you the facts and figures of my portfolio career, the real splits, some of the changes I'm making, and what I'm looking forward to in 2026. Here's the rough agenda that I'm going to work through. I wanted to start with is the stats that wouldn't make any sort of board deck whatsoever. And I'm calling them the unofficial stats. I tried to start calculating for some reason the number of coffees I consumed, and I stopped counting in March. All you've got to know is that the baristas know my order, know all of my existential crises. They laugh at my dumb jokes. And by this point, I'm probably paying for any future renovations that they're thinking of doing. This year, I also decided to raw dog my walks, as the kids say, no headphones, nothing to distract me. And my walks became somewhat of a negotiation between the version of me who had all of these ideas and the version of me who immediately explains to myself why things won't work. Sometimes I talk myself out of really good ideas that I've reflected on, and sometimes they were just dumb ideas. So I'm glad that I had that negotiation. My morning walks have been my savior. It's like walking meditation. And now I don't know how I could walk with my headphones in because it'd feel very destabilizing. What I wasn't so great at was including public holidays and blocking them out in my calendar so I wouldn't work them. I was kind of still working off the UK calendar, and so I missed 4 public holidays where my husband and son were off having a lovely brunch or doing something fun, and I was on Zoom wondering why the energy felt off. This is not going to happen in 2026 because I've already planned out all of my calendar, blocked out all of my holidays, and really learned how important calendar management is. And it's still a work in progress, but this is something that I really encourage all of my clients to look at before they start any quarter, or if you can do it now before the new year, it's a super important task to look at. June and July were super tough months for me. My energy plummeted. I really started questioning everything. And I even drafted an email at least 3 times that was along the lines of maybe I should just go get a normal job. I'm glad I never sent any of those emails. I did feel like I had a couple of existential crises or spirals, and a lot of it just has to do with being in perimenopause and my hormones plummeting. And I'm sharing this because the highlight reel version of building a business can sometimes feel like the person's always on an up, up, up. I had a lot of people think that of me because I had really successful workshops and launches, but there were a few months there, particularly in the middle of the year, that were just super tricky. And as a portfolio careerist, a solopreneur, whatever you want to call it, it was really tricky to do the work and stay focused. About 6 or 7 months into this year, I realized that working from home was not great for my creativity, my mental health, feeling inspired. I invested in a co-working membership. And actually, in my human design, I have something that's called a split definition. So whenever I'm feeling stuck, it's usually because I've been in my own energy for too long, and I need to be physically around other people, different environments, and talk out some of this stuckness. Getting out more was seriously a game changer for me, and I'll be incorporating more of that as I move into 2026. Now, onto some of the official numbers, and I'm going to start with the stat that I'm most proud of. And I checked it at least 8 or 9 times because I couldn't actually believe that I achieved my goals. At the beginning of the year, I want to talk to someone new each day or 3 to 4 times a week. And it can be a potential client, it can be someone you might want to collaborate with, it could be someone you're just interested in speaking to because you love their work. And so I had a goal of opening up my calendar and having free one-to-one strategy calls that went for 20 to 30 minutes. And I had 231 strategy calls across 50 weeks. And that meant I was having 4 to 5 new conversations every week. Some weeks I spoke to 10 or 15 people, and some weeks I spoke to 2 people. But on average, it meant that I was speaking to 4 to 5 new people every week, which was so incredible to achieve because that's really how you build a business. You understand who your ideal clients are. Some calls weren't the right fit, but I treated every single one as an opportunity to build a relationship, not as a sales pitch. And here's some of what happened as a result of that. I had 51 people come through the Portfolio Career Club and I launched 3 times. My goal was actually to launch 4 times, but as I said, I had that huge dip in the middle of the year and I decided to cancel my mid-year launch. And I'm really proud to say that 100% of the club members all came from those relationship building conversations. Some of those calls that I had this year, and I wrote about this in a previous Substack, were people that I'd spoken to 18 months ago or someone I had spoken to 7 months ago, and they had booked back in my diary to see how we could work together. These conversations weren't from viral posts. I haven't had anything go viral. They were all from conversations, really building intentional relationships with people. And I think that this is probably the most important slide of the whole deck. It is around how relationships are the business model, particularly if you're working in the service industry. This is going to become even more important in 2026 because of all of the AI slop and AI is taking over. What's going to be left over is that human to human deep connection and people trusting relationships. So I'm the most proud of this stat for sure. Another thing that blew my mind was the number of people that signed up to my workshops. I'm always so grateful that people are dedicating their time to come and listen to me teach for 60 or 90 minutes. I held 6 workshops across this year. I'm looking to double that next year and change the model a bit. So that's something I'm excited about. But across 6 workshops, I had over 2,700 people join, which was insane. And from those workshops where most of the 231 calls came from, 51 women joined the Portfolio Career Club. And that's the community piece of my portfolio, right? It is really about making sure that I'm supporting and delivering value and then inviting people in to work with me on a deeper level when they feel right. And it really worked this year. Other parts of my portfolio included my private mentorship clients. This is where I go into deeper one-to-one work and I act as a strategic partner in their business. So I help them activate new revenue more on a one-to-one basis. I had 20 private mentorship clients and it was just incredible. We had strategy days and it really reminded me of how much I love my craft and that my corporate experience is really doing me well. Sometimes I thought I wasted so many years in corporate, but actually I'm leveraging so much of it and it's actually made me really happy to recognize and reflect on that. I also produced 47 human design career insights reports. So that's my bespoke career insights reports based on your human design. My target was around 60. I'm moderately happy with 47 and I have plans to increase that number next year. And I've had 1 revenue share partnership, which I'll talk more about later because it taught me something really important about the type of work I want to do, what looks really good on paper versus what's in reality. And this is what a portfolio career actually looks like in practice. Multiple streams, different price points, and different depths of relationship. On the content side of things, I experimented with all different platforms, formats, and I have a very honed focus next year. But this year was all about feeling into what felt right, the rhythm, how I could be consistent in my way. And I've really learnt a lot. So I ended up posting 40 newsletters on Substack. I wanted 52, but I missed a few weeks and that's okay. I went on 7 podcast guest appearances. I wanted 16. I found this a real challenge to get feedback or get responses. So I've pivoted my approach for next year. I also ended up publishing on LinkedIn and Instagram between, on average, 1 to 3 times a week, which I think was really great. I'm very pleased with that. Sometimes I posted more, sometimes I posted less, but it was all within the framework that I was aiming for. And I also launched a podcast of my own with a co-host and a friend of 15 years called Challenge the Work, where we talk all about the future of work. And that was something that really lit me up and continues to inspire me. I wanted to include this in here because I was not going to pitch for this podcast. It's called Offline by Alison Rice, and my ops manager really encouraged me to pitch for this podcast. Said, you never know what's going to happen. I sent the pitch and she responded, and it was a real highlight of my year. I flew up to Sydney. We had a fantastic conversation. And, she said yes, and I was nearly not going to pitch. So sometimes the thing you need to trust isn't yourself. Sometimes it's the person who sees you more clearly than you see yourself. I also got an opportunity and was approached by a really well-known business podcast. On the surface, it was great exposure. But when I pitched different ideas that I could talk about, so, my whole brand and what I talk about is where energetic intelligence meets smart, sustainable business building in the shape of portfolio careers. They were interested in the portfolio career component, but didn't want me to talk about anything around somatics, energetic intelligence, anything human design related. And I thought about this deeply because, from an ego perspective, I'm like, I want more publicity. And then I looked at it deeper and I thought, if I can't talk about the thing that really makes my work mine and a core tool that I use, then it just felt like it was misaligned and a no. And so I just thought to myself, not every opportunity is your opportunity, and that's also okay. So here is my portfolio breakdown. I've broken it down in percentages. I personally don't put numbers on the page. I don't think that's helpful. The number becomes the thing instead of the actual intention and message of what I'm trying to talk to. And that's about my different income streams and the percentage that I earn from them. So first off, 40% came from the club, 30% came from my private mentorship and strategic partnerships. 15% became from B2B and speaking, which I'm looking to increase next year. And 10% came from strategy days. And that's something new I started to do this year, and hosting full day strategy events for scaling businesses. And that's like a sweet spot of mine. I'm going to do more of that next year. 5% came from reports. What you can see here is that I have multiple streams of revenue, and there's different depths, right? There's different amounts of portions that make up my portfolio and how much time I invest into that. So for example, my human design reports have systematized them. They're fantastic and they bring in revenue without me having to do a lot on a weekly basis. And I really feel like there's no single point of failure. And that's what I wanted from my career. I wanted optionality. I wanted to be able to have control of different income streams, so I wasn't relying on one. And I really felt like I'm moving more into this shape. So this is what I teach, and that's why I'm showing you mine, so you can really see under the hood of exactly how my portfolio is made up. What I did discover in October this year was that the 40% from the club is something that I'm changing next year. I initially thought, oh, I've got this wrong. I've got the shape wrong. But essentially, just the ideal client that I'm targeting and the shape that I'm delivering, there's a bit of a mismatch. And that's the thing I'm changing next year. So let me break down the changes to Portfolio Career Club is one of my core products. What was really working for the last couple of years was letting in two types of people into the club. I call them explorers and builders. So the explorers were still finding out what a portfolio career could look like for them, and the builders already had traction and needed a different type of support. So what was working is that I could serve both in the same container, because one was at the beginning and one was, 6 to 12 months in, and it worked really well. But as the year went on and I had more people come through and have conversations with me, the gap between what each group needed kept growing apart. And I kept trying to bridge it instead of really sitting with it and saying, okay, the structure is wrong. So this took me until, I would say, till September, where I was doing my most recent intake for my February cohort. And I thought, okay, this is the last time that I'm going to do the Portfolio Career Club in this shape, because next year I really have to split it out into different products. And initially I had a bit of a freak out because I'm like, that's my core revenue generator. It makes me great money. I've systematized everything. But actually, as I leaned into it, it just opened up so much more opportunity of how I can support people. And that's my wrap for 2025. In the newsletter, I go into more detail about some of the things I continue to learn about myself as a person running their own business, I had things like comparisonitis creep back in, and I really started to compare myself with other people who were doing similar work to me. I again was trying to fit myself into this 9 to 5, 5 day a week model because that was part of my conditioning for 20 years. And really getting clear about strategic partnerships that look fantastic on paper, but actually were they the right shape for me. I found out like a lot of the time they weren't. So I write more about that in my Substack newsletter, but this was just a general overview. So you could take a peek inside my split of my portfolio. You can see the different income streams, and you can even see what I'm changing next year. What I'm really excited about next year is supporting more people in the early transition of thinking about quitting their 9 to 5 or transitioning into a portfolio career and having specific tools just for them, and then working more deeply with scaling portfolio careerists, and also hosting more workshops, more in-person events, and just getting into that community vibe more because that's something that I really crave. And if you want to run your own version of this review, I've included 7 diagnostic questions in this newsletter that goes with this video. Thank you so much for watching. Have a wonderful, safe break over this festive season, and I'll see you in 2026.